Divorce is one of the most challenging transitions in life, and without the right guidance, it can quickly turn into a disaster. Welcome to Dodging Divorce Disasters, the show that helps you navigate the legal, financial, and emotional pitfalls of divorce before they happen. In each episode, I sit down with a top professional in the divorce community to hear real-life war stories, cautionary tales from the trenches of divorce. But I won't leave you with just the horror stories. The experts will break down exactly what went wrong and, more importantly, how you can avoid making the same mistakes. Whether you're in the early stages of separation, deep in the process, or supporting someone through it, we are here to help you move forward with clarity, confidence, and fewer regrets. I'm your host, Lori Hawkins, and I am a local expert in divorce real estate. I am so excited to be sharing these incredible professionals with you. Let's dive in. I am so excited today to have Katrina Reese Newton. I had to look because you've kind of got a new name, and it's not really even official yet. But I'm so glad that you're on here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on here.
For having me. I'm
Of
excited to be
course.
here.
Yeah. Okay. So you are a little bit of everything. And so I want you just to tell us like your company name, what you do, kind of what you specialize in, your areas that you may have offices or how you do your work. Tell us all
Absolutely.
that.
So I am a trained licensed clinical social worker, and I've been in practice, my own private practice, for nearly 20 years. And I've also branched out now into divorce coaching.
Okay.
So I blend all my years of therapy with the coaching aspect, specifically around high conflict divorce and helping women through all the stages of the divorce process, all the way from contemplation, the messy middle, and then rebuilding their life after. And my company is called Empowering Transitions Divorce Coaching.
Okay. Now, do you only do virtual or do you do in office or how
I
does
do
that
both.
work?
I do both. So I work with people actually all over the globe. Actually, I have people in Africa, in Europe, in California, Alaska. So I do a lot of virtual, obviously, with them, but I also do have an office in North Carolina, in Huntersville, and South Carolina, in Lake Wiley. So I'm kind of all over the map to work with people in lots of different ways.
Now, tell me what made you also take on the divorce coach aspect of this?
So I do, as a therapist specializing in relationships, and I've worked with a lot of really high conflict divorce cases, and just really has been a passion of mine. Ideally, to protect the children and to be an advocate for children, and doing so of working with the parents of parenting together or separately navigating this transition. And I am an expert witness for the court. My name comes up a lot in court documents that judges have appointed me to work with high conflict couples. And so I got a lot of experience there, and saw that there was just this huge piece missing. I also went through my own divorce and really recognized this huge missing gap of, we have almost 60% of people getting a divorce now, and there is such a lack of information of what do I do? And it is a major life transition, and people have very little guidance, and a lot of the guidance honestly is very poor advice that you're going to learn the hard way to prevent later, that you're going to wish you prevented later. And so I wish I had known divorce coaching existed, that there's this whole realm of someone helping prepare you, that knows, the law, and knows what you need to decide on in divorce, to help walk you through step by step, breaking it down manageable, to navigate that process, which takes out so much of the overwhelm and honestly saves a lot of money in the process that you're not wasting on lawyers when you're not sure what you're doing. That is really expensive when you're just working with your attorney and putting all of it on their weight to help
Yeah.
you navigate.
Everything you said was just like spot on. I mean, because I couldn't agree with you more. And a lot of that translates so directly to what I do with divorce real estate, because um, I wish I had had a CDRE back because I went through a divorce myself too. And if I had had someone to help me when I was selling my house, and that type of thing, that also had systems and procedures in place that would help mitigate conflict and some stress because they just had things there to keep things rolling and knew how to take care of problems. And I love that you kind of do that from start to finish. Now, you mentioned kind of being a child advocate. What does that mean, and how do you kind of work that into the process?
Being a therapist, I work with people at all ages, but even, when I work with adults, it's seeing so much residual issues that have come from their childhood and how they were raised and their parents' relationships, as well as hearing children voice the issues that were happening with their parents' relationship, whether they're married or they ended up going through a split. And so, really listening to what they were saying and these children not having a voice and so much wisdom for what they were seeing was happening, and really profound, insightful thoughts and ideas, and no one really to listen. And so I started being a voice for them to adults and to the court to say, this is what's happening, this is the research behind it. They're incredibly valid in what's happening here, and this is what we know is going to be the consequences if something isn't done about this. So me being an adult and having, the letters after my name to have people listen to me more than the children, it's just taking so much what could turn into trauma. It doesn't have to. It's not the idea of a divorce that causes the trauma, it's how it's handled. And so if I can help parents just with education, psychoeducation, and a path and language around how to manage this, and how it doesn't have to be so hard. It is just such a service to the children, and the kids just say, thank you so much for that. And, we need to get the courts involved where they can sometimes mandate some of this or really listen to what the experts are saying to really help these kids, because a lot of this can just be so prevented if we just know how to navigate the process.
Yeah, I completely agree with that too. One of the things, as being a CDRE, I will not put a for sale sign in the yard unless the kids have been notified that the house is going to be for sale.
It's a little
Because,
detail like that you don't even recognize changes the whole dynamic and the whole story that's going to stay with people forever. I love that.
well, I already feel like the kids are already feeling mom and dad is divorcing my whole life. And then if they do not know that a home is going to be sold and they get off a school bus and then see that and they think they're one safe place. Now, that isn't necessarily my rule. That is in the code of ethics for the CDRE.
Yeah.
But I am very happy that that's in there because it really is. It just gives a little bit of a soft spot for them to land when it comes to dealing with the house. And when the parents are going through this major upheaval, it may not even be that they are trying to necessarily keep it from the kids. They just don't think, oh, they're not going to care. They know we're going through this and all of this kind of stuff. But I know that to be different too. I have a hair, excuse me.
But when
Okay.
people know what to expect, it takes so much fear out of it. And so, if we can talk through anyone, again, through children or through adults, hey, let me prepare you for what you're is about to experience. So much of the fear, because that unknown is deleted. And we can say, this is going to happen, and then this, and then this. And we can plan for it. And that makes a very scary, overwhelming, emotionally charged situation feel more manageable and in control, which again is going to help you move through it with much more success and effectiveness.
Totally agree. Okay, fun fact, because I kind of mentioned it when we first opened up, because I knew you as Katrina Reese, and then your information came in, and Newton was on the end. So, what's going on with you?
Yeah. So I'm going to be getting married next month, and so branching my professional name out there to kind of make the switch over to Newton, which is really funny because a lot of people are like, "Wow, you're a divorce coach and you're getting remarried," because the myth is like we're against marriage, and I think that is not true at all. I'm actually such a proponent in marriage in a healthy relationship dynamics. So I've learned a lot from my first experience, and doing it better and different the second time around. So all for it. So it's very exciting.
Well, I'm so excited for you. That is so neat. Now, do you only work with women?
No, I definitely work with both. I do have a passion in my heart for women in dynamics. A huge thing is I have seen the difference between what women go through divorce and do extremely well, and then I've watched other people go through divorce, and even as the years actually go on, time does not heal all wounds, and I actually see these women falling apart and deteriorating more and more as time goes on. And this has been really passion of mine to figure out like what makes someone do really well and what makes someone not. And I see some of these women falling into this victim mentality when things have happened, and time does not heal all wounds. And there are very specific things of healing where my therapy training comes in that we can move through this, but you do have to take actionable steps to make this move on so you don't get stuck in it. And so I just have such a passion in my heart to help women not make this the end of their story, or where they keep saying like I'm this divorced woman, that they can move on in a really healthy way and to move into empowerment and agency and learning from their experiences, not repeating patterns, that they can move forward. And how they can be really healthy individuals for their children. We do know research wise that like mom's relationship with the children is just so imperative. And so mom being in an emotionally healthy place is proven research that is going to help how your children are doing. And so when I can help these mamas really move through this in a healthy way and guide them and also teach them how they can help their children through this, they're going to do much better. But I work with men too, and yeah, that's definitely
And
definitely work with both.
do you work with children?
As a therapist, I did. I don't anymore. I did a lot of that, but now my passion is just really working with the parents and helping them navigate it and teaching them like the same things that I would do with kids that are helping. You don't need a therapist degree to do that. I'm teaching parents who are going to be in the kid's life forever. This is how you can support your kids through this. This is questions. This is how to check in and support their emotions. So kind of just giving them, equipping them to handle a lot of that, because not all kids are going to want therapy, and when their parents are pushing that on them or whatnot, it's just another thing that makes them feel like the problem, and they didn't choose any of this. So
Right.
I'm really not against forcing a kid into therapy if that's not what they're for. I can help the parents help them heal that in the home.
Yeah, that makes sense because the parents are the ones, at least one of them, are the ones that's
Yeah,
going to be with them all the time.
yeah.
So that makes really good sense. You also mentioned testifying in court, which I am finding less and less therapists are allowing themselves to testify in court. So that is something that you do. And can you kind of give an example of like when you would be called, and do you just tell all the deep dark secrets? How does
No.
all that work?
No. So, a lot of people are scared of court. And again, they don't know what to expect or what they're allowed to do. And they're so afraid of being sued or something like that. And so, again, when you know the information, information is power. And so, I've done extensive training on how to do this from the very beginning of when you work with people, to be prepared for that. If you're, especially, I'm mainly in court if I work with the child and I'm called in to testify as the child's therapist, what's going on, what's impacting them. So you do not share, you do not give opinions, you're just reporting observations and what you see in your therapeutic assessment. Part of working with children is also still working with their parents and the family dynamic. And so when you're giving recommendations and you see one parent is purposely going against it, doing things that you're educating them is in alienating the children from one parent, and you're showing the research on this, and they're purposely continuing to do that. Again, I'm not making a decision on that. I'm just saying I gave this recommendation. Parent A is following it. Parent B is choosing not. These are the effects I see on the children: increased anxiety, wetting the bed, crying, grades dropping, things like that. And then the court takes that information and makes a decision. The therapist or the divorce coach does not make any recommendation. That is not our job. Our job is to just report, and when you're trained of how to do that, and then the people who make the decisions go based off of that.
I understand that. As a CDRE, I am also trained to be able to testify in court. And one of the things that they instill in us is we are there to educate the court. Pure and simple. We're not there to prove anybody else wrong or to even prove ourselves right. We are just there, like you said, to report and to educate the judge that may not have a clue.
Right.
This might be the first time. The judge may not even have children. And, and you're having to educate the judge, to.
Absolutely. And I work with a lot of, again, these are high conflict cases, personality disorders, parent alienation, coercive control. And so to the naked eye, you're not seeing necessarily these things. If you're not in it, you're missing it. They can be very manipulative, and they can be very manipulative in the court. They can use the system, again, as a weapon against the spouse. It's a form of continuing to abuse the partner who is trying to leave that abusive situation. And there's so much fear when you're in those relationships, and then they still have to co-parent. And because that's like such a passion of mine, I'm not scared of these individuals. And I want to get up there again to, in a professional way, show what's happening and to educate this happening right here. Like we call that coercive control, him or her hiding the money, not paying for this, right? This is hurting the children. And this, again, is another form of control. That's an abusive dynamic, right? And so when you can educate and you can work with other people that are trained in that, the difference is seeing the training, because when someone's not trained, they miss a lot of that. So you have to get people working on your team, the guardian ad litem, the attorney, all these players that are specifically trained in this high conflict dynamic, because it's a completely different animal than a typical divorce, and it must be treated as such, or you're actually going to be part of the process and abusing these people if you're not trained in it. So it's very imperative that there's different people and experts working on these type of cases.
Yeah, that is great advice. Great advice. Well, speaking of dodging divorce disasters, we always like to have when people are on here, because we know in all the experts in any field of divorce, we all get crazy stories. And we would love for you to share one and maybe give advice to the listeners on how they could maybe avoid or dodge this divorce disaster so it doesn't have to happen to them. Do you have one to share with us?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. I think one of the biggest things is people have to expect that you're dealing with a different spouse when you're divorcing them than when you were in your relationship with them. And you think you know someone, you could have been married to them for 20 years, but what divorce could possibly do to someone, the emotional reactions and the level and behaviors that you see come out, people are unprepared for them. And they just never would have expected that. And I think that opens them up to a lot of things happening. So we have a big thing now with technology being used against people. So I think it's being very wise. Like, you have to have people looking for how, they're getting in through your Apple family plan and getting into your computers, in your emails. I have one couple that's going through a divorce, and he's getting into her Alexa in her house and training the Alexa to call her names. They're going through the child's phone and writing messages as mom to make mom look bad and then showing them to the kids of things that were never said. So we've got this new area with technology, and because technology is so new, we don't have laws and regulations, and this harassment, stalking, and abuse that's happening when people are separating, again, the followers and bugging their cars and things like that. So you have to be very, very mindful and diligent in looking for all of that and being very careful, changing passwords. You can bring places to assess some of these things that are going on, but technology is something people have to be very careful of because they're collecting and they're creating situations to try to create something to, again, either do this parental alienation or set them up to try to use it as weapons in court.
That is horrifying.
Yeah, it's
And
terrible.
a whole nother level that people didn't have to, it's bad enough to go through a divorce, but then to add that level on top of it is crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. And so
Oh my
because
God.
technology and all these things are just so new, we're missing any legislation and these things are falling through the cracks. And the law is like, well, even Apple is like, it can do that, but it's not supposed to. But people who have some of these personality disorders or who have been hurt will go to great lengths. And so I think you have to prepare to deal with a different person that you've dealt with, and sometimes people's ignorance or we agreed on that verbally, right? Like that probably is going to change,
Yeah.
and you've got to do these things to protect yourself, get them in writing. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of disappointment.
I say all the time that I meet the nicest people at the worst times of their life. And it's so true. And with me being transactional, I am just in there. I only do the listing side. So I am in and out. And a lot of times I don't get to know the real person because I am just there during selling of the house and then I'm gone. So, and I do realize that selling the house is a big part
Yeah.
of, going like the settlement, but it's also only one part of what these people are going through. And, with child custody and all of that other stuff, breaking up businesses and rental properties and second homes and all of that, just to think about what you just said is just another layer. Honestly, it breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart. Okay, you mentioned about the critical need for creating truly effective parenting plans. Can you talk about that some? Because
Yeah.
I think that's good too.
So a big thing is a lot of clients think that I'm going to go to my lawyer and they're going to make this parenting plan, but what we have to recognize is these parenting plans are extremely generic, okay? They are not specifically looking at your family, your needs, and they're also not looking at all the nuance. Again, high conflict is completely different ball game than a typical divorce. And so a high conflict co-parent is using anything to try to play with, to try to manipulate, to try to push those boundaries, to see how much they can get away with. And so if you do not have a rock solid parenting plan, so for example, you wouldn't want like mom and dad are going to split extracurricular activities with the kids. What does that mean? What if one parent doesn't agree with the activity? What does that uncover? So you have to spell things out to a T. If you put in there, dad will reimburse, 70% of the extracurriculars. When? How? What if he doesn't? You need to put a clause in there. If this doesn't happen, then what? Because these are things that one, you're just not going to get. So it's going to open you up to conflict, and two, you're not going to have any ramification. They want to take it to court and say they didn't do this thing. They're going to have all these loopholes to argue that's not what I meant, right? And so if I, as someone that's not involved in this, hasn't heard you guys talk, if I can't crystal clear tell what this means and looking at through that lens, that means that it's up to be a conflict. So you have to write these parenting plans so clear and so spelled out, and also recognizing what you're fighting for. Because some of these clauses that people spend a lot of time fighting for, there are things that don't matter as much. There are things that you want to make sure is in this parenting plan. But there's other things that to spend all these dollars going back and forth about, if girlfriends can be introduced to your kids, the judge is never going to rule that dad's going to lose custody because he has a girlfriend, right? It doesn't matter that you both agreed you have to date for 6 months before. If he goes into contempt, all the judge is going to say is, it doesn't really matter, let's take that out anyway, because people are expected to be able to move on with your lives. And so it's hard to distinguish what is something that I fight for that needs to be in there, or what are things that I need to let go of a little bit. And I have to work with a lot of people on, you can't control that. There is a lot of over control and over managing, especially that women do, and that I have to work on what they become the high conflict parent, because they are trying to control what's happening that is not a safety issue. It's just not the way that they would like it, and they've got to work on letting go of some of that, because if everything is important, then nothing is important. Right. So we have to stick with the things that are really dangerous or safety issues, not fighting over all this little stuff that just doesn't matter, that is just causing conflict, which that is affecting the kids. And then you're part of the problem.
And I feel like when you're going through a divorce, you try to nitpick as much as you can because you want to win and get your way, because there is so much that's out of your control that anything that the smallest little victory, you're like, okay, I won that.
So
Even
much
though
emotion.
it's insignificant.
Yeah,
But
there's just everything is so emotionally stressful at that time. And let's remember, the lawyer is not dealing with any of your emotions. And so if you're not figuring out how to filter and manage that, it is affecting your ability to make logical decisions. Your emotional mind is literally hijacked. And so the logic is not getting through. So it feels like they think that this is really a big deal. And if you're not working with a coach and a therapist and people to help you regulate yourself, again, then you're in court for all this time fighting over these things that don't really matter. And then that's going to make you a not credible witness when you go to court, because it looks like you're fighting over things that don't matter.
and it's costing you a lot of money.
And it's costing you thousands. I mean, people are going bankrupt, and it doesn't have to be that way. And so the fear is, I can hardly afford my lawyer. How can I afford these other people on my team, like a divorce coach? It's actually saving you so much money, because this stuff is strategic, it's systematic, it's organized, it's going to tell you all of the things to think about, and the coach is going to help you make those decisions. So when you go to your lawyer, you just say A, B, and C is what I want, and the lawyer just legally is able to tell you what they're able to do. And so it is saving my clients, at least, we can add it up, at least 50 to 75% of what their fees are working with a divorce coach and a lawyer versus just a lawyer.
And that is hard. That is hard because money is tight during a divorce. My whole divorce procedure changes with the divorce listing because I am much more aware that things cannot be done to a home unless they are going to bring you a great rate, return on investment for whatever it is that you do. But I always tell them, once I become involved with a transaction, I become the liaison now, not only between the two owners that are divorcing, the two sellers, but also with their attorney. And I always laugh and tell them, I'm cheaper because I am not going to charge you every time I open an email or I text you or if you phone call me. So bring everything that has to do with the house through me. But it's a mindset that you're just already paying so much money for an attorney that there's no way that, they have enough money to be able to get someone like you. Let me ask you this because I think this was really interesting. You mentioned like the importance of boundaries and communications. How do you help women develop skills like in these high conflict divorces and things? Like when you're dealing with a narcissist, like anybody that's co-parenting that is not in line with you, how do you help them with that?
So there's two main pillars, okay? So one pillar is called clear boundaries, okay? And this is an acronym. So every letter stands for something. So in clear boundaries, this is what we're establishing from the very beginning. C is going to be, what are your boundaries? Again, boundaries are something that I do. It's not you need to bring the kids back to me at this time. It's what I can control, right? And so you're helping first help them manage what actually is a boundary, because most people think they won't listen to my boundaries. The boundary is something that you do. I can't control if you message me, but I can control if I look at your text or respond back. So the boundary is I don't respond to text messages after 6 o'clock. You can still be sending those in, but I will not be responding to those until the next morning, right? And so you're helping them figure out what their clear boundaries are. And we're creating that. So C is critical non-negotiables. Okay. So what are your absolutes that are most important to you that we're really fighting for? Because like you said, everything can't be a fight. We've got to figure out what are your non-negotiables. Okay. So we have that. We have limits on direct contact. We're setting up, this is what we're saying is the only hours that we're going to respond, or the only days. This is the only way. We don't answer phone calls, right? We're only going to respond back through the parenting app. So we in session figure out what that is, and then I help hold them accountable to what they decide on. I'm going to hold them accountable for that. Direct contact. We want to deal with that other ex as little as possible, so we're really cutting down on that. And actually, there isn't very much that you need to deal with. So that's a hard thing for women, but we work on that. We work on an escalation protocol. So when is this needing to escalate to go to your lawyer or to go to your guardian ad litem? So we're setting specific protocols for when these things happen. So again, we're cutting down on what those costs are. Very little should actually go to your lawyer. We're coming up with alternatives for support, right? So we're creating a solid support system for them, therapist, friends, groups, things like that. And the last is rewards. How are we going to reward ourselves for dealing with these really hard things? We're setting up ways to reward. You're going to go get a pedicure. You're going to go treat yourself to your favorite Starbucks expensive coffee, things like that. So we're working right from the beginning on this system that I call clear boundaries. That is really an important protocol that we're going to put into place. Number two is how we deal with communication. So it's BIF communication. So we are brief, informative, friendly, and firm. We're also pairing this with Gray Rock, which is our neutral poker face response. We are unemotional. Okay, so you're boring. Gray Rock is how can I be as boring as possible? And we're only answering back with this communication of a BIF. We're taking all emotion out of it, and messages should be very short. One word answers, one sentence answer. We should not be getting paragraphs, sending paragraphs back and forth. We just give the information. And again, what needs to be told to the other parent and what is the boundaries that we don't need to do all this back and forth. So we're really coming up using these pillars as a system and a framework to help. Again, this gives the woman a sense of power and agency, that this is the rules and this is what I can control, and we're working through this. I'm also working with women directly, and we're in constant real time to practice these things. So all the magic happens after the sessions where you're getting blown up with these scenarios. So my clients are set up in a system where they message me when that's happening. They might text me a keyword we come up with, like maybe it's pause, right? And then they briefly tell me the situation as we establish, and we work in real time on infiltrating these skills. How can we rework that text so you're replying in a brief, informative, firm way? And so we work on those things, and we're helping them learn these skills. And so they're reworking and creating these new patterns. And so they're really getting support full time, not just one weekly session where they're working on these skills and using these boundaries and these communication skills to learn how to manage, and applies to everything that you're getting here.
That is amazing. You
Yeah.
must be a very busy person.
Yeah. Well, it's good boundaries. When you have boundaries, and I'm modeling that myself, modeling what my time is, modeling what these systems look like and how it's being communicated, you can actually manage a lot. You can manage more stress than you thought. You have more time, right? Because you have a system to organize all this. It actually makes it really manageable, and it's not that hard.
Yeah, no, that is fantastic. Well, you said you're getting married again and you said you were divorced. So you must be able to work through a divorce and come out healthy on the other side, right? You are hope for for those that are going through divorce. So, well, I cannot thank you enough for all the great information that you gave today. I am going to put all your contact information up, but just tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah. So you can reach me on empoweringdivorcecoaching.com. That's my website, and that's how they can book with me, and everything there. I offer groups as well, for support and psychoeducation, again, in a group format, as well as individual coaching. I also do a lot of free information on my TikTok, which is the Divorce Coach Expert. So I'm giving a lot of these skills every day. I'm posting multiple videos to teach people, but a lot of people, that's not enough. They really want, like, how do I help apply it? And that's where the coaching really comes in, for me to walk aside you and help you incorporate all of these skills. So I love to teach. I love to give people the information, because again, then they can feel capable to handle all of this. So you can find me on all the socials, my website. I'm all over the place trying to help.
That is fantastic. Well, you have given some great advice today, and I can't thank you enough for sharing it with our
Thank you so
listeners.
much.
And we will be in touch soon, okay?
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.